Hello. Make sure my volume is up and you can hear and you can. You should be able to anyway. I hope you can. I'm gonna finish off the Renaissance with you. Gave you the Reformation last. Now this is the looking out. Look out. And there's quite a bit to get into, but I'm going to simplify it. The looking outward has to do with the idea of sailing, and it's about the discovery of new worlds. After all the time I'm doing this right now, a lot of new discoveries are going on. One of them that's made the news lately is the discovery of water on the moon. So we're always looking up and looking out. In fact, you could put the scientists, the scientific revolution in with this. The Renaissance is all encompassing. We just splice it for our own benefit. In fact, several authors even argue there was no such thing as a renaissance. It's not a rebirth. It's a selective um, look at history. In other words, the people of Europe simply look back at parts of the Greeks and Romans they liked. They kind of took it, fashioned it to what they wanted it to be, and therefore it's just a birth. It's not a rebirth. You can take that if you want. The idea that the most important thing is to understand with the new technology coming in, thus the science, it gave Europe, it shifted it to dominate, become dominate. And the discovery of the New World was really marked as a golden age, literally gold. In fact, the three G's come in: God, glory, and then gold. All three work together in this period of looking out. With new navigational techniques, such as the Prince Henry the Navigator's School, the lateen sails, the triangular sails, the compass, items like this, it allowed the Europeans to begin to try to get quicker trade routes. And this meant the ocean. These large ships, such as the Caravel, that was designed by the Portuguese, but then used by others, could carry more. Kind of, I call it the minivan of the day. And the carrying meant both to and back. You could carry soldiers, you could carry supplies, you could carry horses. Very important as you get into the New World. The horse is a European commodity at this point, Asian provinces. But in the New World, when the Europeans ended up, in fact, the Spanish conquest, the horses are very, very critical. And so, with that, one of the great conquerors I would look at is the Spanish conquest. They found gold pretty readily. They also carried the cross with the sword, under this idea of, of religious, the God, and the gold then go together along with the glory. But the God part had to do with priests. The church is going to come with the conquistadores in this case, the Portuguese too, and the church then could evangelize these local people, these natives, and therefore they could save their souls, and by doing so, the church is expanded as well. So the church, if you looked at the last video with the Reformation and the church, the Catholic Church is under this tremendous attack. It's actually exported and began to develop in the New World in large amounts. You see it all throughout this part of the country I live in. I live in New Mexico, and you see the pueblos and the missions, and you see the churches, and you see it all throughout California too. In fact, a lot of names. I live near a place not too far anyway from called Santa Fe, Santa Fe. Okay, the Santa. You go to California, you got Santa Barbara and Santa Clara and Santa Monica and so on like this. All these saints. So this is part of bringing it to the New World. The gold is really the main driver. This is the golden age, as it's called. You have a king in Spain named Charles V. You can call him Charles I. He had both titles. It depended which one you're applying it to, whether he was the Holy Roman Emperor or whether he was the King of Spain. Okay. And so he's Charles I of Spain, but he's Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire. And it's under his watchful eye that these expeditions really began to grow. You got to go back to Ferdinand and Isabella with Columbus, but it's really under King Charles that you began to see this massive amount of wealth come into Spain via coming to Europe. And really, the whole point of that is this is the first time, this is the beginning of where Europe takes center stage in the map. Prior to this, Europe is not a dominant region at all. Now, because of this technology shift in it, you can go back to the video I gave you on Asia, okay, the shift, the east to the west. Um, this is all coming in at the same time. And Europe, from the time of the Renaissance all the way up until World War II, for about 400 to 500 years, Europe enjoyed the idea of being the power of the world, the cultural center of the world. And it's really the Renaissance that you have to kind of find that foundation. So as you have this exportation of values that the Europeans held, the God, and you see the idea of the influx of wealth, not only the gold in the sense of pure gold that the Spanish picked up. By the way, this is the reason you get pirates. Are here comes Halloween. You want to dress up as a pirate. Piracy is a wonderful way if you're like the English or the French or something like this, and you can't get total access to the gold. You don't find it. It's easy. You just steal it from the other guy, and you got these pirates running around. The English got really good at this. You had a guy named Sir Francis Drake, the British, English, and he was a good pirate, okay, for the Brits anyway. Yes, Sir Walter Raleigh. He's fun to read about. Raleigh's not a boring guy. Get a little sliver of reading about him. He's fascinating. He truly was a Renaissance man. He was a poet. He was a soldier. He was a skeptic. He was a humanist. I mean, you name it, he'd pretty much done it. And but he was also the mastermind behind a lot of the expeditions as far as piracy goes. So explorer. And so when you get into this, the idea is the gold that the Spanish found. The Spanish are going to get huge amounts of wealth in Mexico, huge amounts of wealth in gold, in with Pizarro's conquest of the Inca. So Cortez with the Aztecs, Pizarro with the Inca, and then you got a whole bunch of expeditions down throughout Southwest United States. But the gold didn't always necessarily have to be pure gold. For example, islands, the sugar, the very rich sugar islands. The Spanish are going to have a lot of sugar cane that's developed. The tobacco. This can be then turned into gold. It's a product, and so the New World product is in demand in Europe. Whether it's the sugar, absolutely essential if you want to talk about chocolate. Here's Halloween. Here comes Christmas. It's all about chocolate, baby. And so this is one of the big sellers. Well, take the sugar out of chocolate and tell me what it's like. So the cacao, the cacao is really it's not a European product. It's a New World product. And then what you find out is the sugar that's added is really this mixture, and it creates this wonderful palatable item that you get these chocolatiers throughout Europe. So it creates an economy. The other one is the tobacco, the smoking. And the tobacco is snuffed and smoked and chewed and you name it. They did everything with it, spit it. Men and women alike, in England especially, got super popular. It's kind of like a Starbucks of the day. You had a tobacco shop in about every corner, and it became wildly popular, of course, wildly addictive, as you know. I'm going to give you my little public service announcement. Don't smoke. And so the bottom line here is all these products are now coming in. So the gold could come in many different forms. And so they create these new economies. So it's not just going out, getting a ship, finding gold, sticking it on the ship and getting it back. It's actually the design of fueling the economies in the rise of this development of the very strong merchant class in Europe. This is part of the Renaissance too. I mentioned it before. My view with the Renaissance is you have not only the artists, you have the explorers, which we're talking about, but you have the merchants. And so that's why you look at my notes and you see my slides that I put in there. You see the money changer and his wife. You begin to, it's a painting of this. The artists are really capturing what's going on, including the conquistadores, like Cortez. So anyway, so you got God, you got gold. Now the glory part is very simple. It's twofold. One is the glory for the nation. You plant the flag in the name of Spain or in the name of England. You discover this land. I hate to say, I mean, we use the word discover. It's really already owned. You know that it's already occupied. You just kind of reoccupy it. You take it. You control it. You conquer it. Okay. One of the great historians I've read said that the Europeans did not find a vacant land; they found a widowed land. diseases are also going to be exchanged between the two regions. And the book I'd highly recommend, by the way, and I don't have it here, it's in my office, is by Charles Mann, M-A-N-N. He wrote a book simply called 1492. He followed it up with a very other successful book, his sequel, 1493, makes sense. So this is about the explorations of the Columbian Exchange, they called it. The Columbian Exchange is this massive exchange between the New World and the Old World, between Europe and now you have all these products going back and forth. In fact, when you sit at Thanksgiving table, it is on display, is the thing we're talking about. The spices are now exchanged, the animals, the turkey, think of it. Okay, the pumpkins, the pumpkin pie without the spices, you really wouldn't want it. I mean, you got to think about these things. So this is that we are products of the Renaissance and the Columbian Exchange, and this idea of Europe taking the centerpiece. So the glory is to the country. You plant the flag for the country, and you claim it in the name of England, in the name of France, and then you begin to see these colonies. The colonies exist for the benefit of the mother country, France or Spain or England or something like that. And each one's finding their own gold. Okay, the French are finding their gold in a thing called furs. This is a lucrative trade with the Native Americans. So the Native Americans are now placed into this global exchange network where previously you had this isolation, you now have this interaction on a very high level. The English found their gold in a couple forms, but really tobacco is the primary one. You find this a lot, but it's also other products. So wood, timber, very important at this period of time. You think of ships, you think of bridges, you think of gun stocks, you can keep on going. And so those are all important. The Spanish, like I said, are the more permanent settlers. They came over and dominated. The Spanish dominated the New World. The Portuguese also down in Brazil. And so you begin to see this, and they're developing this very lucrative trade network. Now, of course, mixed in this is the other video I sent to you. You can put in the labor, the need for labor and demand for it, the African. The Native American indigenous people didn't last very long with this type of labor system. They start, once again, not a vacant land, but a widowed land, large death rate among the Native Americans. You needed someone else to do the mining. You needed someone else to do the labor, intense labor on these plantations, whether it was Spanish, English, or otherwise, the Dutch or someone else who had them. And so now you start importing the African. So you can kind of see that when we get to this part of the Renaissance, the 1500s specifically, but into the 1600s, but really the 1500s, you see the development and the growth, the interaction and the interconnection of these regions. So it is a new world that's being discovered. Okay, it's a new world. I had to look at my notes real quick. I'm sorry. It's not only a new world that's overseas that we're talking about, but it's a new world being created back in Europe. Okay, and the interactions that's going on, and the new world's being created in the African community. You can kind of see this web develop, and it's a very interesting and fascinating one. And it's our modern one is based on this. And whenever we talk about the word globalization, I always remember this. Every time I read another article, another book on globalization, I always say, and then globalization began. I mean, it's almost like I'm thinking it's like the middle class, the rise of the middle class. Like there's some souffle, and they just keep. I'm like, wait a minute, it always have to keep going backwards to find out where is the really ground zero for this. I would argue that really the Renaissance, but you can even go before that with the Silk Roads and stuff like this, and kind of see a globalization. After all, we've been talking about this. Remember the development of the Alexandrian Empire, but this is on a much larger scale. It just keeps getting larger, is what I'm going to point out. And so this discovery, this new technology, the science of the day, is coming in to allow this sailing to occur, and now you have this massive interaction. And it's allowing for a new world overseas that's being discovered, but a new world at home is being discovered as well. And so the glory, I said, is in twofold. One is for the country, but also for the individual. Let me give you the easiest example to me, and that's Cortez. When Cortez got the expedition, stole the expedition from Diego de Velazquez out of Cuba. When Cortez got that expedition, you got to understand Cortez was in the military. He's the third born son who came from a not very really wealthy family or wealthy area of Spain anywhere. He was from the Extremadura region in Spain, very poor area. And a lot of these conquistadores were in the military for the purpose of trying to find an outlet, basically, because they weren't born into a wealthy family. They weren't going to get anything. It was always in Europe what's called primogeniture. The firstborn got everything. And so if they got the land or whatever you could give to them, what's the second, third, fourth, fifth son or whatever going to do? Well, Cortez fit that. Bill. And so he ended up on an expedition, very young, ended up coming over to the New World. And because of that, he's looking for his glory, his status. And that's what the New World represented, is a new opportunity to raise one's status. So if you're along with Cortez as a conquistador for all your troubles, now this is a very hard life. What do you want? You don't want to just sit there and raise your sword and say, that was fun. You want something back. Now, you're probably not going to get a lot of gold, because most of the big cut, the quinto real, the royal fist, is going to go back to the Spanish king. You're gonna have this cut, and Cortez is going to get a big cut because he's got this contract that he's now signed. Um, but as the lone other conquistador that survived in this, what do you get? You can get a big parcel of land. Now, why is that good for you? Land's no good unless it can be worked. You're going to need labor, so you have this plantation. But now you can leave it to your kids, or even divide it amongst your kids. And so the glory, the status of your own individuality increases. So that's why I'm saying, I think I said this before to you when I teach American history. I don't always say the land of opportunity. I say flip it around. It's the opportunity for land. And land meant status, still does. My dad used to have a line he'd give to me. He said, "Look," he says, God quit making land, but man, He's making people. But who knows? The discovery of water on the moon. Let's hold out. Maybe we want to buy some of that moon property now, right? I don't know. But either way, it's this idea that the Renaissance ideas and institutions, and so now you have these inventions, and they're now all coming in play, where this new world overseas is now developing a new world at home. Not too bad. And you think of today, this may be true. Who knows what's in store for the space exploration? Who knows what's up there? Now, aliens, I live in Roswell, New Mexico, so hey, I guess I gotta say okay. But the reality is, um, we'll see what happens. Maybe the new explorations, maybe your generation is the new one to discover and to venture and to be the first one. Because I'm sure everyone thought that others were just as crazy to go across that vast ocean and into the new world. But look at us now. So anyway, I miss you guys. I've been saying this a lot, but I do. I can't wait till we reconvene. Think of this for the Renaissance as looking up, looking in, looking out, looking back. Okay? I can't wait to be back. All right. You guys take care. Bye bye.